looking for a beginner-friendly crochet pattern that is made to measure and it's super great for winter, then you're in the right place. So this is the mulled wine jumper. To be honest, I started working on this jumper in the spring, but then life happened. This is a beginner-friendly, made-to-measure pattern. It's made with just single crochet and half double crochet. This is a free pattern with a full tutorial on Ribblr, so you can click the link in the description and get your pattern on Ribblr. Follow along. The video would be linked within the pattern, so you can just head over there and continue watching this full tutorial from within the pattern. And yeah, I'll guide you through how you can create your own jumper for your own measurements, and I'm so excited, so let's get into it. I'm using worsted weight acrylic yarn, but just use whichever yarn you like with the corresponding hook size. You need to take 4 different measurements of yourself, so follow the instructions in the pattern and just write down your final measurements. Now, the math I've come up with for the measurements and how it's made to measure is sort of divided to 3 sections. So you have each shoulder part and then the middle. This is where we'll also do the mock neck part. And the 3 sections are even. So you have the same number of rows basically on each one of the sections. To measure yourself, you would measure around your chest, so preferably when you're just like wearing clothes like that, because sweaters go on top of everything, so you don't want to measure too tightly that it's too small. So basically you measure your bust and then you divide that number in half, because we're doing one panel at a time. We're not doing all around sweater, we're doing like the front and then the back. So we're dividing the measurements in half, and then the half of your bust circumference needs to be divided to 3. I will put my measurements and what I've done for myself up on the screen so you can see what I mean by that. I already made the front, but both the front and the back are almost exactly the same, so I'm going to show you how I make it with the back piece. Starting with a slip knot, what we're going to do now is we're going to do a foundation half double crochet. So we're going to chain 2 and make a half double crochet into the first chain. But before we finish it, we're going to pull through the first chain, and then we're going to make another chain, and then we are going to finish the half double crochet. So basically I've done an extra step, and that was to make an extra chain at the bottom. So now our next stitch is going to be made into that chain that we've created, and this is how we create more half double crochet stitches into the foundation of our work. Instead, you can just chain a number of stitches up front and then make half double crochet across, but I've done this because I wasn't sure how many stitches I want and how long I want the jumper to be. So this is something for people who haven't really decided what's the total length of the jumper that they want. I recommend this. So now just carry on making foundation half double crochets until you reach your desired length. So because this is a made to measure sweater, the front panel is what you need to make first, because the length of the sweater is decided with the number of chains you make in the beginning or the number of foundation chains for foundation half double crochets. First make the front, decide the length, how many stitches you want and you need for that, and then after you finish that, you're going to make the back, and you're going to add 3 stitches more to what you made in the front. You can just make a journal note, and as you start the pattern, and just write how many stitches you're making, then you can always open up your journal at any point in the pattern and just see how many stitches you chose to do. Then when you reach the back section, you can just add 3 stitches on top of that number that you started with in the front. I actually really enjoy the foundation stitches. I mean, I haven't used them most of my crochet journey because I just didn't see the point in them. I just would chain and then make my stitches into the chains. But foundation chain stitch allows you to basically go at it blindly, like not knowing how many chains you want to make at the beginning. Because when you do just like a chain and then you make the stitches into the chain, it always makes the final outcome a bit more large than it is when you're just chaining. So this is quite a nice solution for that, because you're making the stitches as you go, so you can decide, okay, this is where I want to stop, this is enough for my measures, and not just like to, you know, frog and unravel your work every time that you've made too many chains in the beginning or not enough chains. So I find that's a really good stitch to use. So I just finished the foundation half double crochet row, and well, basically I haven't finished. I made the exact same number of stitches as I made for the front, and now I'm going to add 3 more stitches. What I'm going to do now is chain 1 and turn my work, and now we're going to work half double crochets in the back loop only of every stitch in the row. So depending on how many stitches you made, you have a different number of stitches you need to make in this row. And basically when you finish this row, this is what you're going to repeat almost throughout the entire back or front panel. So as I said, we're chaining 1, we'll turn our work, and then we'll do our first half double crochet into that same stitch, the last stitch of the previous row, in the back loop only. Now I'm going to work all my half double crochets into the back loop. So I just finished the second row. I made the same number of stitches. Make sure that you count to see that you have the same number of stitches, that you're not increasing or decreasing at the end or beginning of your work. So basically now I'm going to repeat this row until I reach the width of one panel. So the measurements, like that third measurement for each of the sections. I'm just going to crochet my rows until I reach like close to that number, to that measurement, and then I need to make sure that I'm doing an even number of rows. So if I've reached that measurement but I haven't finished on an even number of rows, if I have like 15 rows, then I will make another one. So I will make 16 rows just to have an even number of rows, and then I'll repeat that same number like in every section. So each section will now be 16 rows. I think that it's better to round up the numbers or to size up a little bit. So if you reach the measurements and it's 15 rows, don't frog the last row, don't unravel your work. So just add a row, and just that will be your number, and then your sweater will be slightly more cozy and oversized, but it's not going to be huge. It's not going to make a huge difference. It just means that it will be more cozy. That's the vibe for this sweater. It's not a tight-fitting sweater. It's something casual that you put over top. So the fact that it's a bit big it's not going to be a big problem. I finished the first side. I've done 16 rows, so let me just count. Yep, 16 rows, and now I'm going to start doing the center piece, which is the mock neckline. So now you're going to chain 7, and if you want a higher neckline, just chain more than that. And now I'm going to start the row. So I'm going to skip that first stitch, and I'm going to make a half double crochet into that second stitch and into the rest of my stitches, which is going to be 6 half double crochet. So now the rest of the row should be as before, making a half double crochet into the back loop of each stitch across. And this is the first row done. What you're going to do now is you're going to carry on making half double crochet in the back loop until you reach the same number of rows as the first side. And I'm just taking some pictures for the pattern that I'm making on Ribblr, and it's super easy. I just open up the design on the Ribblr app and take the picture directly into the pattern. It's so quick. I finished the center section. I've done 16 rows, and it's exactly the same as the first side. I kept the gauge the same, and I've ended up with both pieces exactly the same size, so that's great. So what we're going to do now is we're going to just remove those extra 6 stitches that we've added. I'm just making sure that I'm not losing my stitches, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to slip stitch into the 6 stitches that I've added. So I'm going to basically skip them and not work them anymore. So I'm just slip stitching into them. Last one. So 6 stitches decreased. Now I'm going to chain 1, and this is where my row will actually start, and I'm going to half double crochet in the back loop of every stitch across. I finished the row, we removed those 6 stitches, and now I'm going to half double crochet in the back loop again until I reach that first stitch. You want to make sure that when you do that second row, you're doing it in that same stitch and you're not increasing or decreasing. So just keep working now, repeating that row until you reach that same number of rows for each side. And these are your 3 sections done. So I have the first side, the middle part, and then the third one. And now we're going to do the edging at the top, which is just single crocheting along the top part, so it's easier to sew later. So carrying over from where we finished the last section, we're going to chain 1, and then we're going to make a single crochet in the row edge. So just getting your hook in there into the stitch at the edge of the row. And then the next row edge, we're going to do 2 single crochets. So this is the first one, and then another one exactly in the same place. And now we're going to repeat this across in every row edge. So first we're going to do 1 single crochet, and then we're going to do 2 single crochet in the next row edge. I've now reached the 6 stitches of the neck. So again, we're going to carry on exactly the same all the way up to those 6 stitches. And now what we're going to do is we're going to just make 1 single crochet into every stitch of those 6 stitches. So it's the slip stitches that we've made, and just all the way to the top of the neckline. Last one. And now basically we'll just repeat the same process as what we've done on the first side. So we're going to do 1 single crochet in the first row edge, and then 2 single crochet in the next row edge all across the neckline. So this is the last row edge, and now I'm going to single crochet in each of those 6 stitches in the back of the stitches. So this is basically the back of the chains that we've made to create the neckline. So 6 single crochets, and now what we're going to do is again repeat that same process that we had in those previous row edges. So single crochet in the first row edge, and then 2 single crochets in the next row edge all the way to the end. And last few single crochets here, so 1 in this row edge and 2 in the last one. And now just fasten off your yarn, leave a long tail for sewing, and this piece is done. So this is the finished front, and as I said, I just made the back, which is 3 stitches longer for the foundation chain, but otherwise all the instructions are exactly the same. So go ahead and finish making the back piece as well, and then we'll move on to making the sleeves. You know, I think I lost some footage of the first row and how I started the cuff, so what you need to do is chain 9 and then skip that first chain and half double crochet into the second chain and all the chains across, and chain 1, turn your work, half double crochet in the back loop only across, and repeat those that row until you reach your cuff measurement, and just make sure that you're ending on an even number row. Don't end on a 17th, for example, round it up for 18. And now we're going to bring that last row we made in the first row together, and we're going to slip stitch through the back loop of both rows together to close that into like a circle to make the cuff become a circle. So just slip stitch each of the stitches together until you reach the end of the row. Now we're going to flip our cuff inside out, because this side is just nicer to be the right side. Now we're going to chain 1 and then make 2 single crochets into every row edge. So same technique as what we've worked on the top edging of the front and back pieces. We're going to get our hook into that stitch in the edge of the row and make 2 single crochet into each of the row edges all around. I already made one sleeve and I just want to make sure that I'm not getting this wrong, so let me just find the sleeves instructions on the Ribblr e-pattern. So I'm here, 2 single crochet in every row edge. So yeah, for a minute there I thought there was single crochet 1 and then 2 single crochet in the next row edge, but so yeah, let's carry on. I just did 2 single crochets all around in every row edge, I mean, and now I'm just slip stitching into the first stitch and finished the round. If you're a designer and you are not using Ribblr as your main designing element, like for writing up patterns, you don't know what you're missing, really. It's so easy to design patterns now. I mean, I used to work with different, like I had a million notebooks where I would just write up everything and I would have to always carry that with me and like use a pen, and then I would cross something if it didn't work out, and I would have like a million different versions. I would have to, later when I would write it up, I would have to fish out like the correct version. It was really confusing, but now I just open up a new design on Ribblr and start adding the like what I'm making row by row, and later on and as I work I can edit it, I can change whatever is not correct anymore, and even better, I can just take pictures directly and add it as I create the pattern, and then I don't have to kind of like be in the dark in like for my notes, like what I wrote, just speaking, so I don't really look at where I am in the pattern. Where I was here. So let me just take a quick picture. So I just have here chain 1, 2 single crochet in every row edge, join with a slip stitch in the first stitch, which is basically what I did just now, and then I just click the media icon and take a picture. So take a photo, and then let me just, so taking my photo, and then I can edit and crop it and add, like, control the brightness and everything to make it clearer. Yeah, and then now it's uploading directly to my pattern, which is now in drafts because, as you can see, I'm clearly still working on it. But this is just a heaven for designers. If you want to keep track of your pattern designing more easily, this is just the best tool for you. And then even if you're not a designer and you're consuming a pattern on Ribblr, then it's super easy to track your progress by clicking the lines. You can click a stitch and then you would see a video tutorial showing you how to make the stitch if you're not sure. And if you are an American crocheter and the pattern is in UK terms, so you can click the US terms, it will just like translate the entire patterns, all the terms from the UK version to the US version and vice versa. If you are using centimeters, you can click and then it will change to inches automatically throughout the entire pattern. So it's really the best for reading and writing patterns. Next step is to chain 2 and then make 3 half double crochets. So I will work my first 3 stitches, then a half double crochet increase, so 2 half double crochets in the next stitch, and I repeat that. So 3 stitches and then 3 regular stitches, then an increased stitch all around. Let's go. So chain 2. Now I'll have 1, 2, 3. Now I'm going to have an increased stitch in the next one. So first half double crochet and then the second half double crochet. And I'm just going to repeat this all around. So yeah, this is the round finished, and I'm just going to slip stitch into the first half double crochet. Okay, so at this point we are going to start turning at the end of each round, and I find it's just the best way to keep the seam going straight of the connecting, because we want to have the stitches match the same way as we done on the bodice. And in the bodice we worked with going like in rows, so the stitches go this way and then that way. So because we want that same texture to be showing, we have to turn. So yeah, we're going to just like turn at the end of each row. Let me just show you how I think this is the best way to do that, because sometimes when you are turning, first I'm just going to chain 2 just to raise the stitch. I'm going to chain 2, then I am going, this is my stitch, this is the last stitch that I made, and this is that stitch. This is the top of it. I'm going to skip this one when I start the round, and I'm going to just work into my next stitch in the back loop. Okay, and then I'm basically just going to make a half double crochet in the back loop of every stitch around until I reach over here, and then I'll show you just so you're not going to confuse the number of stitches you're making in every row, because this happened to me and I ended up increasing 1 stitch in every row, and then I had to frog half of my sleeve. So yeah, I just came up with this system for me to keep track of the stitches. So as I showed you, the first stitch of the round you're going to make in the next stitch, so not that same one that you just finished and made, but the next one. And then basically crochet all the way to the end of the round and join to the top of the chain 2 with a slip stitch, and that's it. It should work out pretty well now. Just make sure that when you continue your work, you don't make a stitch into that same beginning stitch. You just skip it and you move on to the next chain. So just for this part, because you are working in the round and turning at the end of each round or the beginning of each round, then just for that I would say count the first chain 2 as a stitch, just so you don't get confused in making that that beginning stitch or last stitch into that same space. So just leave that beginning of the round as it is and work start the round in the next stitch and just finish it all the way around, not worrying about what happens on that post, the beginning post. So just use that chain 2 as your first stitch, and it will work out nicely. It will look, you would still see that there is the seam is going there, but it will be very unified and it will be just like a straight line, so it doesn't seem too obvious. I can show you here. So this this is the line. You can still see it, but to be honest, this is because of the back loop situation, because that stitch is just a chain and it's not worked in the back loop because it's just chain. But the sleeve will be folded like that on the side, so this will be the underarm this way, so it's not going to be visible unless you kind of like lift your hand like that, and it will make sense to have it there. Yeah, so should be fine. Just keep going, keep working, it will work out. And even if it doesn't, I mean, it is a handmade sweater, so if people come at you for having that seam being visible, then they're not really good friends, I would say. You can use the pattern to track your progress or to add notes of how many rows you do. Basically, at this point, what you need to do is to work up until you're like half of the length, or until you reach about your elbow in terms of length. And when you reach that kind of length, we will do a bit more increasing to get it a bit wider at the top part of the sleeve. But until then, just keep working, repeating that same row, half double crochet in the back loop only, turning at the end or the beginning of each row. And yeah, see you when I'm finishing half of the sleeve. So this is my sleeve so far. I'm going to stop here and do some increases, but let me show you what I mean by reaching half of the measurement for your sleeve length. So I want my sleeve to be 48 centimeters. So when I'm measuring for the sleeve, for this part to be just half of the length, I'm measuring excluding the cuff. So I'm just measuring from the first row here, and this is approximately 26 centimeters. So this is about half of the length. So my next row is the first increase row, and it means it says to turn, chain 2, and then make 2 half double crochet in the back loop of the first stitch, and then half double crochet in the back loop of the rest of the stitches. So we can do that. We can just go ahead and do like a chain 2, and then in this one stitch make 2 half double crochets. But remember, I told you before that we are skipping that same stitch where we do the chain 2 because it counts as a stitch. Instead, what we can do, because we are increasing in the beginning here, instead of making 2 half double crochets in this back loop here, you can also, if you want, do 1 stitch into that same stitch and then another one in that first stitch. So you kind of like made your 1 stitch increase over here, and then just carry on working the rest of the round as normal, just half double crochet in the back loop of every stitch. And then I'm making my last stitch, and as usual I'll just slip stitch to the top of the first stitch. And this is my first increase round, and what we're going to do is we're going to repeat that same round 3 more times. So we have a total of 4 increase rounds, and after that we will just carry on working normal rounds. So I made my first stitch in that same stitch to make the increase, and then I'll just half double crochet around. I made the 4 increase rounds, and this is how it's looking. You see there's a slight shape of increases going on here. This is going to be the underarm seam as well, so it's not going to be very noticeable at the top. And now all you need to do is keep working in the rounds, half double crocheting around until you reach your total and final sleeve length. Just make sure that when you make your first sleeve, you note where on which round you started making the increases and how many rounds in total you made, just so you make the same number of rounds on both sides and it doesn't look wonky and uneven. Now just place the front panel on top of the back panel, and we're going to sew the shoulders and the sides of the neckline together. Just over there, we're going to use the remaining tail, and I'm going to zoom you in a minute to see exactly what I'm doing. So I'll just thread the remaining yarn tail through a needle. A yarn needle, and this is where my yarn is. This is my last stitch over here, so I'm inserting it into that last stitch and into the first stitch of the front, and then I'm just pulling tightly. Now I'm going through the front, the next stitch on the front and the next stitch on the back, and pulling tightly, and then I'm going again from the back, next stitch on the back to the next stitch on the front. I'm going back and forth, and then next stitch on the front, next stitch on the back. So obviously if you didn't have any mistakes, then you should have the exact amount of stitches on each side. So everything should match up perfectly for this sewing part. This is why I love this technique of creating an edge of stitches for where you want to sew, because then it's a bit more easy to sew going under stitches rather than just on the row edges. So I'm just going up here for the neck. Is this the stitch? Yes, this one. And I'm just entering that another stitch further than the 6 of the side of the mock, just so I can tie my string here, my yarn, and to get like a cleaner edge. But that's it. Right, so I finished sewing the shoulders. Now to add the sleeves. So this is your sleeve. You have the seam going all across the one side of it where the yarn tail is. So this should be at the bottom, so the underarm over here. So like that. But I want you to make sure that the bottom of the jumper, the stitches match at the bottom, because then when you flatten it, it will come that the back would sort of like curl at the top, and when you will be sewing it, you sew it like that, so the shoulder seam is like more toward the front, like that, not at the top. But just make sure that at the bottom you're starting from the correct sleeve. We'll be sewing from the bottom, going all the way up here, and then we will carry on attaching the sleeve. So what I think I should do is basically put a stitch marker where I think I should start doing the sleeve, so I'm not carrying over sewing and missing the mark where I want to start connecting the sleeve. So let me get a stitch marker, and then I'll mark both sides. I'll try and do it as evenly as I possibly can. I think I'll just try and count the stitches either from the bottom or from the top for where I'm marking it, and I'll be right back. 23 stitches it is, my lucky number. Let's get sewing. So over here is where I started to realize that a whip stitch will be much better, at least specifically for the sides and the sleeve section, because it will feel a lot less bulky, and this is what I ended up doing for the sleeves especially. I already sewed the side, so I just kept that same stitch that was running back and forth, but for the sleeve, for sure, definitely use a whip stitch, and I'll show it in a minute when I'll do the other sleeve. But if you prefer, just do a whip stitch for the entire jumper. So connect everything using a whip stitch. I think it would be a bit more easy to do than the stitch that I've done. Right, so I finished attaching the sleeve. I just realized that it makes more sense to connect the pieces with a whip stitch and not with this stitch that was like running back and forth. Just because it's more smooth and it's less bulky, especially for the sleeve, that's important. So just use a whip stitch here so it doesn't get bulky in the seam. Here it doesn't matter as much, but it just like there's an ugly side unless it's like a design element that you like and want that to be featured. But if you don't really mind, then you can just like do a whip stitch over here as well, and then it doesn't really matter front and back, not front and back, I mean right side and wrong side for the jumper. I think I'm just going to zoom you in on this side as I connect this sleeve, just to show you in more detail how I do it, and basically I'm done. So only this side to sew from the bottom all the way up, connecting the sleeve and weaving the ends, and we're done. So the same as before, we're going to insert our yarn into the bottom of the front and the back, so match the bottom stitches, and then sew up until we reach that marked stitch, and then we are going to use the whip stitch and connect the stitches in the back side of the sleeve and the back panel. You can pinch the two parts and just bring them together so it's easier to sew, and then just run your needle through the stitches until you reach all the way to the top, and then basically you just bring your yarn to the front and carry on doing exactly the same thing, but attaching the front part of the sleeve and the front panel until you reach all the way back to the marked stitch again, and then you tie your yarn and you just weave all the remaining tails and you're done. I'm so happy that I finished it before the winter and before the holiday season, because I have been working on this project for too long. This really turned out exactly as I imagined it. I mean, this was the thought, and the execution is just right. It's just exactly as I thought it would turn out. I'm really happy about that. I also paired it with these burgundy corduroy trousers, which I think that a little bit of color blocking is perfect for this occasion. It's a free pattern on Ribblr, and I would love to see your finished jumpers as well, so feel free to head over to the free app, get the pattern, and take pictures as you work, upload it to your journal. I would love to see everybody get creative and create their own spin on this jumper. Let me know if there's anything that you want me to design specifically. You never know, I might design it here and turn it into a free pattern. Feel free to subscribe to our channel. We have this amazing free tutorial for these super cute chunky cow slippers with chenille yarn. So these are just perfect for the cozy season. And until next time, stay crafty.